to me, we've forgotten as women just all our beautiful rituals that bring us back home. And so that's what my message is. It's not about developing something that isn't already inherently inside us. And that's all I'm about, is activating what is already there.
You're reawakening Aphrodite.
Absolutely. And perfect for our conversation.
I feel like that's what you taught us today, is how to awaken Aphrodite in us.
Yes. Yes.
I love it.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite.
And welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. Today, my guest is repeat guest, Dr. Christine Page. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Amy, for having me back. I'm looking forward to this wonderful conversation we're going to have.
Oh, my goodness. Like I said in the introduction, your first appearance on the show, episode back 25. Wow, I was just a newbie at the time. And that was one of the most popular to this day. It's timeless, Dr. Page. I mean, talking about the phases of the feminine, the moon cycles, the triple goddess. We touched on classic feminine, female issues. And to this day, I just want to refer the audience back to that because it'll never grow old. I can never listen to it enough. I hear something new every time.
Oh, pleasure's mine. And do feel free to call me Christine. It's a nice connection.
Oh, thank you so much. And you know, that is something that's always struck me about you, in that unlike a lot of doctors and people in prominent positions, they usually really insist on the formality of things. And I think it's very revealing about you that you're secure enough and comfortable enough, just like we're a person and a person, you know, in spite of all your amazing accomplishments and you know, accolades. So very impressive as usual.
Thank you.
Wow. So there's so much that I could ask you about. You're so knowledgeable about so many things. I love how you are truly the mystic physician, and your knowledge of astrology and the depth of your knowledge of astrology is always something that I greatly appreciate and enjoy each week on HeartSpeak, your podcast. So I know when this is airing will be March of 2023. It's been a heck of a couple years, that's for sure. And from what I understand from you, March of 2023 is a very significant time astrologically. So regardless of when people are hearing or watching this on YouTube, I think it'd be appropriate for us to perhaps start there to lay the foundation. But before you actually get into the March projections, could you just take a step back and help us understand why astrology is even relevant to our everyday lives?
It's a really good question. And I'm a Gemini, so I'm going to say that, but I'm a curious, innocent child, I call myself. And that means I have always, whether even before my days of doing medicine, was like, why do people get sick? Why are we here? I'm always asking these questions. And of course, I probably drove my family mad. Why? And fortunately, I had parents who were also adventurous and curious. So we explored so much, not just in our minds, but physically as well. We went places. And I was brought up with a lot of metaphysical teachings. And I use that word, which included astrology, but it also included things like homeopathy and energy healing and mediumship and psychic abilities. But it was always, from my parents' point of view, is let's explore it. Let's see what it can tell us. And that's the approach I take. I don't say anything is the Bible, if I may say it in those terms. I say, if it makes sense to you, follow it. If it doesn't, let it go. It's no big deal. But as I went into medicine and I kept, obviously I was seeing 40 patients a day at that time. And it was like, wow, 3 people with the same problem seem to have a similar personality, or 3 people with the same problem seem to have a similar aspect within their astrology. And it wasn't that I was trying to fit the astrology into the person. It was the other way around. It was like, do you think there's some relevance that this person is, I don't know, a Cancerian, and they seem to have big issues about their home and family, or that they're a Taurus and they're talking to me about security? So I started to realize there were links. And that's really been my world, Amy, is like I did iris diagnosis. I looked at someone's iris, and it's easier when someone has either bluey green or brown eyes. It's hard when someone's got very dark eyes or dark irises. But I said, wow, here's your history in your irises. I could tell your physical well-being. I could tell your emotional well-being. Again, you can't scrub and change the iris, but I felt that the messages of who we are everywhere. And I learned about reflexology. I learned about, the length of my fingers. I learned about people's second toe being longer than the main toe. So it felt like everything we were looking at has a message. And it's same with my sound, the voice. My voice can be showing who I am. So I'm really saying is, I think there are so many ways in to understanding who we are. And my sadness is that in medicine, we don't do that. We tend to go for, a blanket test, like a CAT scan or MRI. And we're like, well, let me see what I could find out there. But there are so many ways of actually pinpointing that at a much earlier stage. In other words, let's say, I'm just going to take the iridology. If I've got greeny eyes, which I've got, it's more likely that I have some challenges with expressing my anger, and I may have gallbladder or liver issues. So I've got these greeny eyes, and I know that I'm not good with a lot of oil in my food. Now, wouldn't this be useful if we just taught our patients or taught everybody, it's not something you're doing wrong, but this would be a guide to how to stay well by looking at your eyes or by looking at your astrology. So that's really where I came into. When my husband and I got together, which is almost 20 years ago, he's a scientist and he wasn't against astrology, but he said, everybody just looking at the back of a TV guide at that time and saying, this is what's going to happen to a 12th of the population. He said, this doesn't make sense. So in his way, he went and got the biggest, fattest books he could on astrology and studied it. And we came to understand that it makes a lot of sense. And it is like a seasonal experience. So it's almost like that first breath that you take as a baby implants into us everything that we came here to do on a soul level. Now, I've been involved with astrology, as you can hear, for probably 40 years. And I've worked with thousands of people with astrology, and it never gets it wrong. I don't look at astrology and say, oh, this is what Amy must be like. I take it the other way around and go, oh, that's what she's talking about, because I'm looking at the chart. So I don't need to convince anybody whether astrology works. I know it does. And sometimes some of my medical friends would say, how could you believe such a thing? And I'd said, how do you forget? Because as in our ancient times, astrology was absolutely side by side with.
It's the root of all current stuff. It's where it all started within the medieval times.
We lost it. And that's what I'm saying is there is so much to understand about ourselves that I think that's the mystery that I love. And therefore don't like to say this has to be this way and this is your fate because it's in your chart. What I see in astrology is, wow, at this moment, you will have an opportunity to make a choice. And that's the way I like to look at it, just like illness gives us a choice. So if that's okay, we'll move on into the kind of march, and I'll keep it very simple. But what we see is the planets obviously just keep moving around the sun as we do, as the Earth does. And we call these transits. So Pluto takes almost 250 years to go around and come back to it where it was in a point, in terms of its orbit is 250 years. We call ours a year, and Saturn takes 29 years. So we have, when some of these bigger planets change from one sign to another, and we could almost say you could see that in the sky, something major happens within ourselves, within the Earth, within what's going on in consciousness. So we've had Saturn going through Aquarius. And Saturn is about focusing our attention on something, focusing on Aquarian ideas, which are about community. It's about freedom. And it can often feel quite restrictive. So, of course, Saturn went into Aquarius 2020, and we all got locked down and our freedom was taken away. But what we all discovered, and that's why Saturn is both the teacher as well as the limiter, it said, where are you going to find your freedom? How are you going to come together? So despite the sort of lockdown and the mandates, we've also discovered communities, as you and I have through our podcasts. We've discovered communities that expect a freedom from the rules, who are willing to step outside the rules. And I think that's been happening. Now Saturn is moving into Pisces. Pisces is about unlimitedness, creativity, but it's also about illusion, delusion, addiction. So what's going to happen is we're going to be focusing on, I think, cults or people telling stories that aren't true, or mythologies. It's almost going to make us go, well, I know you've been telling me that, but is that true? And we're going to see people moving more and more into wanting to use, if I may say, drugs to have a higher level of consciousness. But we're also going to see that risk where they're not going to be able to keep their feet on the ground. So this is going to be a really juxtaposition between expanding ourselves and becoming more rooted in a reality that is modern and exciting, but actually makes sense down here on Earth. And so that's Saturn. I just say Pluto is moving. Pluto is coming all the way around to where it was 250 years ago, which has a lot of influence of what's happening in America, because this was the time when the Constitution of America was written, that 250 odd years ago. And I think that's why we hear so much talk about the Constitution, about, what's the First Amendment, what's the second, because these are important features now for discussion, especially in America. So it's like, why was America born? What was it born on? What were the rules? Why did we do it? These are all great questions. And I think apart from just for America, they're questions we're asking ourselves. Why are we here? What are we going to do together? And we're going to see such an expansion in communities, in coming together, similar thinking, new thinking, but it's not going to be about leadership anymore. It's not going to be about who's going to lead us out of this mess. And that's the shift that's going to be taken, which is very exciting.
Hello, I hope you're enjoying the show today. I wanted to jump in here to share with you something that has completely changed my life and is very important for you. Most people don't spend nearly enough time outside. And I know it's very difficult too. I have trouble spending enough time outside too. But we're designed to be outside, to be exposed to the full spectrum of natural light throughout the day. And we are just not getting enough. What does that look like? It looks like sleep problems, mood problems, detoxification problems, trouble losing weight, pain problems. Okay, the problems go on, and I've got a solution for you. Sauna space. I've been looking for a long time for a home sauna, because sauna space not only combines the important benefits of heat therapy, but they also combine it with light therapy. And it's actually, the fancy word is called photobiomodulation, meaning your cells need light for nutrition, just like vitamins for your body. Sauna space is unique because they use infrared and near-infrared light, which is unlike the Finnish saunas that most of us think about when they think of a sauna, right? Like those wooden boxes where you go in and just sweat to death. Well, this is even better because, yes, you get the heat. And by the way, this heats up a lot faster. But you also get the photobiomodulation, the light benefits, which is going to help your mood. It's going to help detoxification. It's going to help your skin and collagen. It's anti-aging. It helps to reduce mold, fungus, viruses. So it helps your immune system. It's helped with pain relief, hair growth, and most importantly, sleep. Sauna space. I love this so much. I've been looking for a very long time for a home sauna, and this was well worth the wait. well worth the wait. I love this company. So you can go ahead and check it out on my website on the recommended products tab and enter the coupon code FitAmyTV5. That's FITAMYTV5 at checkout and save 5%. Well, I think it's really incredible just to put a pen in what you mentioned about Pluto being in the position that now that it was last in 250 years ago when the Constitution of America was created. I mean, it's just truly remarkable. And the relationship that we have as human beings to the stars and the planetary system is not something people understand or know about, not to mention can study to help give insight as to what's going on in our lives. Because, you know, first of all, there's so many things that happen in the everyday life that, you know, someone like me takes too much responsibility. I think like I'm causing all this, or I must be doing something wrong, you know? And then sometimes I think, well, maybe it's just not in the stars right now. It's not necessarily I'm doing something wrong. Like, as you know, I've been looking for my dream home for 3 years, you know? And maybe it's not that I have the wrong realtors or I'm not being the right energy to attract it. And, you know, because I always, again, blame myself. And I think, well, you know, maybe it's just the planets aren't lined up and it has really nothing to do to me, but unbeknownst to my little brain, I'm just not aware of it. So we don't know about, and we're just not taught, unfortunately, about this intimate relationship that we have with the stars. I mean, we are made of the same thing as the stars, but we're not aware of it.
Exactly. And you know, Pluto is often seen as a masculine energy along with Hades, but Pluto really, this was only really during the Greek and Roman times that the underworld was ruled by the masculine. In every other culture, it's the feminine that's in the underworld.
Yeah.
This is the crone. You know, we talked about this, the Persephone energy, the Kali energy, the Ereshkigal energy. I mean, every culture has this dark goddess, not negative, but dark goddess in the underworld saying, you owe me, you know, come home. Yeah. And so every culture, it's a bit like the dark moon time that I spoke about before, that when there's no moon in the sky, that's the time where the dark goddess is in control. And she's saying, you need to die to the old parts of you so you can be born to something new. And I feel that that's one of one of the gifts that Pluto's doing. Pluto is saying, what needs to die in order to become more fully formed? What in us needs to die? And I think that that's really focusing. And it's interesting when we think about, the beginning of America, we often do founding fathers, but I'd love to hear about the founding mothers.
Yeah.
Because, you know, behind every good man, there's a woman. And, you know, these energies, and what I had also looked at when I was looking at Pluto going through the years, and I think I put this out on Heartspeak, was that I saw that every time Pluto had been around in Aquarius, there'd been a powerful female figure who had brought transformation to religion or transformation to communities. Oh, wow. And I thought that was fascinating. We could say Anne Boleyn during Henry VIII's time. You know, this was a time where she was the one that broke Britain away from the Catholic Church or the Roman Catholic Church, and Britain developed their own Church of England. But it wasn't so much a breakdown, but she was the one that says, let's do something new. Let's not follow these old rules. And I think that that's what I also see coming through during this time. And it will go up, I think it's 2044, that Pluto goes into Aquarius 2023, 2024, it goes backwards and forwards, and then it will be there for another 20 years. So, you know, we are talking about a time where the feminine is going to step forward in a much greater way than ever before. And I feel it's women who will say, we're going to form a community that will look after the well-being of our children or the well-being of our hospitals it's women who are going to come together. Not to say it's not going to be men, but it's women who will say, no, this isn't going to work for the next 7 generations. We need to be active. So that's what I expect, because Pluto is the dark goddess who says, you can't threaten me with all your, what if you're going to die? The women are, because of our cycle that we talked about last time, every month we die to the old. So that when women are becoming stronger, they say, I die every month. So you threatening me isn't actually going to be a problem. So we're bringing it on. In other words, taking something away from me that I'm willing to give up every month are not a threat. Because women are more focused on what is good for the community, for their family, for the future. And that's what I'm thinking we're going to see more of, women stepping up.
Well, wasn't it Zarathustra who said, the person who fears death is already dead?
Interesting. I love it.
If you think of it, yeah.
I love it.
What you triggered in me is, saying women are leading the charge, but it's also the feminine in men.
Exactly. I don't want to leave them out.
The feminine aspect in them is going to fight for what's important and valuable and right.
Yes, but they do it for the sake of their family. It's again that connectivity, we could say. A man will fight for his children. But I always remember someone saying, a terrorist, it's more scary to have a terrorist who's a woman than a man, because a woman never gives in. If she's fighting for something, she just keeps going.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's good about terrorists, but I'm tking, that determination, for when a woman gets determined, and I had that in my mother, who I could describe like a big bear. If she saw something suffer, her children suffering, nothing would have stopped her.
That reminds me of a guest on my show, Zen Honeycutt. We talked about, she started Moms Across America.
There you go.
She talks about the power. These are just grassroots. The woman that you see in the supermarket that were standing up against GMO labels, and the fact that we're basically being duped all the time, and they are all these loopholes, and their children are having autism and all these terrible issues, and the moms, and they went in front of Congress, in their jeans and their whatever, their fanny packs and whatever, and but they were determined, and they listened to them, because what one of the senators told her, that we're actually more afraid of you guys than like any other high powered, whatever CEO, because moms are tenacious, because when love is involved, forget it. Like you're not going to give up. You'll die. You'll just, I'm fighting. It's worth dying for.
Exactly. And I would, being of an age now, I would be calling on all grandmothers, if I had grandchildren, I would never let my grandchildren be going to some of these drag shows.
Sure.
It would be so appalling that we would allow our children to be in front of something which is not appropriate to their age or to their sensitivity. And I'm not, again, putting down those who want to go to this, but I know what is right for a child, and a child is so vulnerable and sensitive to those energies and can't always make sense of it as we can as adults. So I'm calling on grandmothers and grandfathers, but they're the ones who should be stepping up and saying, you're not coming into my school or into my area, because this is abusive energy. And children don't know the difference. And that's why, unfortunately, we have so much childhood abuse still happening, because children are vulnerable to those experiences.
Well, it's funny, Christine, you're saying this, because I feel the same way. And always the retort is like, people want to be politically correct, and they're afraid to speak up. And it's like, so you're just, who's it that said something like, by not speaking up, you're consenting it, is something
exactly.
But if you don't speak up, then you're basically consenting with it. So you have to
I'm speaking up because, in all my work, I've over 40 years of now working with people all around the world. And I've listened to the most horrendous stories of sexual abuse. I mean, I've heard a lot of physical abuse and emotional, but sexual abuse. And I had this naivety in me to think that, oh yes, it's the generation that I'm listening to. It's not happening now. And of course it is happening now. And it's 1 in 4. And, the figures were 1 in 4 children have been abused in some way or other. And I look at, a neighborhood and say, in that 1 in 4 of these houses, there is abuse of children going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have worked so much with adult children, we could say, who are trying to come to terms with, did I cause this? Did I do it? What did I do wrong? Oh, I never want to have sex at all. Or I feel I'm going to be a prostitute, which is what happens. And I'm just like, this is not okay. We're messing with people's minds. We're messing with children's minds because they are still at that age. I don't care how sophisticated they are, confused between love and liking and sensuality and sexuality. We're confused with what is right, if we're going to be loved or not. How a child ever makes sense of that? And we as adults need to be appropriate with those children's minds and their emotions so they don't end up messed up like so many people out there in the world.
Well, they're just so impressionable, you know, and they're experimenting, which is natural.
Yes.
Like it's like trying on a shirt to see if you like the way it fits. It doesn't mean you want to like staple it to your body.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of learning about life and just trying something without a full blown commitment, and it's natural. So,
Yes.
but again,
there's so much I think that's going to come up, and I think that's what we're discussing.
Yeah,
is that it is about men, women, grandfathers, grandmothers, but it's about self-accountability and responsibility. And that's what the Pluto in Aquarius is about. It's not about, oh, he told me to do it, so I'm doing it. Everything we're going to be doing now has to be we are choosing to do this. Mm-hmm. So we can't blame anymore. Mm-hmm. And this is a big step forward for us to where we actually say, I'm responsible for whatever, myself, my growth, my thoughts, my actions. And that doesn't mean it's blame. It's about choice. I'm choosing to do this. Yeah. And that is something that we are still, stumbling around with, because it's so much easier to blame someone else.
But what about the blind trust? Like the people that are just believing the narrative or just what they're told because they just don't have the bandwidth, jobs, kids, demands, laundry, whatever, to do some research to uncover, maybe there's an ulterior motive here and I'm not getting the whole story. Like, how about that?
I think that those would always make that choice not to listen to anything else. I mean, I've worked with people who are highly intelligent and who do that, people who don't. That's and true. It's a choice. So, yeah. And I see that in my work, Amy, where someone may ask my opinion of something, and I give it in a very open way, and they go, oh, well, that's I can't do that, and they've already shut the door. So, this is really around the throat chakra. So the throat chakra is to do with change, and so if I offer something like, well, why don't you take a 5-minute walk, in the morning? And they go, oh, I couldn't do that. It might rain, or I haven't got an umbrella. And everything I suggest gets batted back again. And what I hear them saying is, please don't ask me to change, because I actually am unhappily happy where I am.
Wow. I can't even relate to that at all.
It's not my way. But the message I think Tony Robbins puts out, when the fear of change is greater than the fear of staying where you are, you will not change.
Yeah.
What they convince themselves of is staying with the security of their belief systems is much safer than taking or being challenged by a new belief system. So they stay where they are and they reject everything else.
It reminds me of the quote, and I don't know who said it, that if you argue for your excuses, you get to keep them.
Oh, that's brilliant. I like that one very much. Yeah. And that's exactly. So if I hear someone butting me, yes, but it's easy for you to talk. You don't know my story. Let me explain why it's not going to happen. So, or they ask a lot of questions like, yeah, but how am I going to, and how, that's why how-to books sell so well, because everybody has all the books on how to, but they never do it. It takes courage to change. And sometimes a disaster or a crisis happens that forces us to make a change. And that's been happening to a lot of people over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Nobody wants a crisis, but sometimes I always say we're stubborn enough to wait till a crisis happens before we have to change.
Yeah, well, I know I did. I mean, it's no secret that I'm pretty thick, and it took, unfortunately, and some people it's an illness or whatever, that's the wake-up call. But regardless, the point is you eventually answer the phone.
Exactly.
and listen, because the universe will keep hitting you harder until you pay attention.
Exactly. And I'm stubborn. I remember Tony Robbins saying in one of the courses I took with him, he said, think of 3 big changes you took in your life. Did you make them from choice? Did you make them from freedom, or did you wait until you had to?
Yeah.
And I was ashamed to say, 2 of them were definitely, pushed to the limit.
Absolutely.
And not because anything was bad, but I kept convincing myself that if I just changed the environment I was in, then everything would be good. I just had to try harder to change the environment I was in. And it was nothing to do with me needing to change. I'm sure everybody's done that.
Well, you're triggering something in me, because one thing that I've learned through other mentors I've had like you is I tend to what's the word, they barter, or I don't know if it's compromise, bargain, kind of give it the out, but maybe it's not so bad because it's this, and then always trying to, I'm a glass is half full person, so I try to look at the good, or give someone the benefit of the doubt, and they're not perfect, I'm not perfect, I shouldn't expect them to be. So what would you say about someone like me?
I mean, I've heard myself do the same, and from an astrology point of view, we often, and again, I don't want anybody to get caught into even just they know their sun sign. When we look at an astrology chart, we look at the whole chart, all the positions. But, when I meet someone who's very scorpionic, and so that they may have a birthday or a sun sign or a moon sign in Scorpio, when things are dead, the relationship's dead and it's dying or dead, they will say, I must try harder.
Right.
And I have got a little bit of Scorpio, or the Virgo energy will always say, what am I doing wrong? So that self-reflection can be in the way of actually saying, no, this is rotten, or this relationship is dead.
Obviously.
And I know what you were still speaking about, a friend. I was with a friend many years ago, and I was in a situation, I was working with someone, and I was complaining. It's not good, and but I can work on that, and maybe it's my karma, or maybe I'm there for all that blah blah blah. And she just said, so why are you still there? And it was like, damn it. Because she saw right through all my blah 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 blah, and just and I'll say to someone, so is this nurturing you? Is this are you getting pleasure from this? And they say, no, I hate the situation. Okay, let's be honest. And I think I hear it in relationships where people say, he's this, she's this, and you go, well, why are you still there? And they go, oh, I love them. And it's like, that's got nothing to do with anything. Does this nurture you? Does it make you feel respected? Does it make you feel pleasured? So making that decision to change, it's like a heart decision. We know that this is going to be hard. And as I say, it's got nothing to do with whether we love someone or not. It's, do we like being with them? Do we like the situation? I think often it's, does this make me feel excited in the morning to go to that job? Does it make me feel good when I come home? Or do I just feel heart sink? That's the time to leave.
How about the thought of is it more good than bad? Like the 80-20 rule. It's nothing's perfect, and there's going to be times you hate it. But I think that I go down when I get heart sink, or, that side when I was in general practice, when I said, I started resenting my patients. So, one of the signs that something needs to change is when you either want to organize everybody to try or you start getting resentful or angry. And I thought, when I start to resent the fact that I'm so busy, it's not a good time to have a practice, a health practice. And that I left that day, because if I'm resenting someone's presence, that can't be good. And then the next step is where you kind of disassociate, and you're spending more time doing games on your computer than you are actually present with someone. Oh.
So, or you're, I don't know, getting lost in anything, cooking, baking, shopping, but that sort of withdrawal into a situation means you shouldn't be there, into some other situation.
So almost like procrastinating creative distractions,
Yes,
as I call it.
you see relationships where they never, I remember a friend saying, oh, I'm going to be so lonely, if I leave. And I said, but you're lonely now.
Right.
What can be worse than where you are now? And
Yeah.
I think we've all been there. It's when we're honest with ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean you should just leave. You should try other things. Maybe we do need to talk and say, hey, we need to talk about this. This isn't working. But sometimes the staying quiet is the thing that doesn't work. We have to sometimes say, look, this is, we're starting to hate each other, or we're hurting each other. What do we need to do together? And then there can be a discussion that says, okay, we need to bring a new contract in with each other. And
it has to be mutual. It can't be one person rowing the boat, or you go in a circle.
Yeah. And I mean, I often feel it's better to say, I feel that this relationship, whether it's a friendship or partnership or whatever, this is becoming destructive. And once we get destructive, it cannot be creative. So I'm prepared to leave it. And that often is spurring the other person on to make a decision to change what they're doing. Sometimes we have to have the courage to say, I'll pull away if it's going to be better for us both.
Wow. Yeah. With love.
With love. I mean, it's the most loving. I often think, what's the most loving thing I can do? Which is actually to say, I don't want to destroy you. I will pull away. I mean, that's loving. It's not staying.
And I don't want to change you.
I don't want to change you. And again, that's a big one for women. I'll say more than men. When I realize that actually they're very happy who they are, I love them who they are. I love them where they are. True. And I like who they are being stable for me, where I can change.
Yes.
And, I tell that story of that woman who had headaches, and I asked her, how long have you had headaches? She said 20 years. And I said, how long have you been married? She said 21. And in the conversation, she said, it's like hitting my head against a brick wall talking to my husband.
Oh boy, there you go.
And I said, there's your headache. And she said, he doesn't want to change. I keep suggesting things he could do. And what I said was, well, why don't you just go out the door rather than try and go through the brick wall? And she looked at me and said, no, I can't change until he does. And so she was using him as her excuse to stay where she was. And I see that a lot. People saying, well, when my children have left home, when my husband has, when my parents have, when they change, I can be happy and I can make my own life. And clearly that's a tremendous impetus, pressure on anybody that you're around, that you expect them to change.
It's a cop-out. I mean,
it is.
That's just a cop-out. I mean, wow. Your Frontiers of Health, that book is full of those wonderful examples of how we unwittingly refer to body stuff with psychological, subconscious stuff in our lives, pain in the ass, or all these expressions we use, and sometimes we don't catch ourselves like what we're saying,
and that's where we come back to that part where I started with, which was saying the body wants to talk to us. The body never gets it wrong. As I always say, you don't get a pain in the neck when you really need a pain in the ass. It's absolutely correct. So when we understand the body, all body parts all have different functions, we can start to understand what they're trying to say to us. And again, it saves a lot of time and money going to the doctor to get a diagnosis.
And I think that's a big reason why there's been a resurgence about all this talk about chakras and energy centers of the body and what's correlated with different parts of the body. But you've always been the person that stood out for me as the original of pointing out, particularly for women, I believe, how the second and fifth chakra are related. And I'll never forget, in one of your live workshops that I attended when I first met you, you had said how our voice, literally the physical voice of a woman who's in her power, comes from her second chakra. She doesn't speak from her throat chakra. And you had us practice speaking from the fifth throat, number 5, as opposed to the second. And I remember at the time I was like, wait, I can't do it right. I don't really, they're sounding the same for me, because I wasn't speaking from my second chakra at the time. And I know for sure in my life, I think of it all the time, because when I'm stressed or overtired or whatever, I definitely speak from my fifth chakra, not my second.
And then that's beautiful. And You know, I can use the example of that when we tend to go up into our throat chakra, we tend to lose all the tone there and we don't have any emotion and we just tell details. And you can tell when someone's there. So when they drop down into that sacral chakra, that second chakra, you can feel the tonality, you can feel the melody, the emotions, and people speak truly. So again, in my work, I might say, well, how do you feel about that? And someone will say, well, I think this is why they're doing this. And it's all up in the head.
Wow.
It's all details, well, she had a difficult life and you go, yeah, but how do you feel? And they take a breath, they go,
drop down.
And they drop down and they say, I'm exhausted because I'm trying to organize their lives so I understand them and I just haven't got it in me anymore, or something like that. Or I have compassion for them, whatever it is. So that dropping down is the I think Freddie Silver said it was the utterer. Our uterus is the utterer, and I like that.
Yes.
So for women, we gather our power into our uterus, whether you have one or not, but a uterus or the sacral chakra, and then you speak from there. And then you speak with that power of the deep connectivity to all life. I think that's what the uterus speaks about. Again, that idea of this isn't about my need. This is about what is good for the whole.
Well, we know the uterus is the power center, and it's actually a sacred power spot.
Yes.
That literally is a portal to the divine. I mean, gosh, that's and it's a unique blessing that female or women, whatever the term is nowadays, women that are people that are born with a uterus are blessed with, that we aren't taught is that way, that it's such a sacred part in our body, and we are truly blessed, and we have a device within ourselves to empower ourselves. And how do we cultivate that? How do we nurture that? How do we tap into that to use this amazing gift?
Yes. And it is such a profound place. I mean, just the very shape of how the uterus and the tubes and the ovaries and the vagina.
It's a container.
It is sacred geometry. It is the sacred mean, the golden mean, the vesica piscis mean. It's all there, and that geometry. You might say, well, it's just a piece of shape, but it actually has its own vibration, and that's what we're talking about. It's a torus. It's its own focal point, its own portal, as you say, into other dimensions. So when we tap into that, we're tapping into many different dimensions and awareness. And the reason that people don't go down there is that it's also the place where we store all our emotions, where we have from any relationship. And that's why the work we do together in the women's work is to clear out your sacred temple of all these old emotions that people are scared of going down there. How did you feel? And sometimes people, especially women, will say to me, if I start crying, I'll never stop.
Yep. I hear it all the time.
And so sometimes we just have to sit in the bath with some sad music and cry and our chocolates and whatever.
Yeah, and do it anyway. I do. Yeah. I just lost my dog, Charlotte, my 14.5-year-old dog, my little baby. And just today, because the episode actually just came out with Amelia Kincaid, who's a mystic animal communicator. And I was on the floor weeping, just weeping. And one thing I've learned, Christine, is that I don't fight it anymore. Although I started listening to the episode while I was out with my other dog, Nico, and I didn't realize I was going to have this reaction. So I started to cry. So I had to kind of hold it in, but because it wasn't like I was with people and stuff, but I promised myself, I'm going to feel you when I can. So I went back home with Nico. We cut the walk short and I put it back on, re-triggered those emotions, and waterworks. Of course, Nico freaked out, like, what's wrong? You're dying. I was really weeping, sobbing my body, because my heart has been crushed. But one thing about me now is I am letting myself go there. I know it's part of the grieving, and part of the healing for me is to feel it and not be afraid to drop down like Persephone into the dark.
That's right.
Because you feel like it's a bottomless pit, which I get. Because let me tell you, I was crying so hard, I thought my face was going to break.
Yes.
But I'm wise enough now to realize it's also why I can even talk about it. Because if I didn't feel that, there's no way I could speak about it now, because it's too raw. I haven't processed it.
That's right. That's
so
right.
I'm thankfully not so thick. I am learning as I get older. Yeah.
And also, you know, I always think that you know, when someone says I shouldn't cry, you're going, but you love this person. So the depth of our grief is also the depth of our love. It would be very sad if someone just passed over and we went, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and that's
how much we love.
That's the poem from Khalil Gibran on Joy and Sorrow. It talks about the depth of your sorrow.
There you go.
They're flip sides. One determines the other. The deeper that sorrow carves into your heart, the deeper joy, the deeper the capacity of joy you can feel.
There you go.
You can't have one without the other. So back to our duality, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm here with my friend Hannah Marabani from Sebin Solis. I have so many favorite products from her line that I have in my e-store on my website. I love them so much, I put them on there and want to share them with you. And one of my favorites is called Magic Sleep. Wow, it has Moroccan argan oil, jojoba, geranium. It's an amazing product. And most importantly, it helps me sleep for those nights that maybe I was up a little too late. Hannah, can you explain to us what exactly is the magic behind Magic Sleep?
It's formulated based on ancient Persian and Chinese medicine. It's our most difficult and intricate formula at Sebin Solis. It takes a lot of time to produce it. We have these little cards that we put into our package. It shows that you have to use the bottom of your feet, which has the largest pores in your entire body, to massage it in. And you have to use your fingers, because the tips of your fingers have these little tiny chakras, these little energy points that warm up those acupuncture kidney points, as we call them in Chinese medicine. It warms it up and it allows for this beautiful serum, oil serum, to be penetrated into your body. The soles of the feet are a focal point of nerve endings and a direct access to the organs in your body. And the feet and ankle in Chinese medicine have acupuncture points on a kidney meridian. And in Chinese medicine, the kidneys are very, very important for sleep. So when you put pressure on those 2 points that you see on our cards, on our Magic Sleep cards, and when you start pressuring them and massaging it, it allows you to have a very restful sleep, fall asleep faster. And I've heard a lot of people say that it promotes their lucid dreaming.
Every now and then I have insomnia just from working too late near a computer. And it works. Try yours, you guys, at a discount. Fit Amy TV 10 at checkout. Enjoy getting some Z's.
Could you please comment, because I love, one of the gazillion things I love about you, how can we be a powerful woman but still in our feminine, Christine? Because you talk about not being a mini man, which I love. I love my show, Awakening Aphrodite. I'm all about it. I'm all about being a powerful warrior goddess like Athena or Artemis. But if we choose to still be very much in our feminine, like you so beautifully exemplify, how can we be powerful women but still be very much in our feminine?
It's such an interesting question there, Amy, because I'm thinking of Athena, for instance, who needed to armor herself and came out the head of her father, you know, and that was really only during that period of time, again, the Greek and Romans, where she went into this patriarchal world, because before that she was Pallas Athena and she didn't have to armor herself. And how many women have armored themselves, and coming out of the head of the father, you know, she then learned that it's only when she's in her head that she can be powerful. And I think that's where we developed a lot of mini men.
Wow.
Whereas intellectually, if I can match a man intellectually or physically, then they would see me and respect me. And I think we have a lot of women who have done that.
Oh God, yeah.
So
that was me.
Well, you know, I'm a doctor, so, you know, I was academically, you know, clever. Fortunately, I went to a college where we'd had a lot of very powerful women, because our college was set up for women when women weren't allowed to go into a man's college. So, you know, I knew the feminine and the intelligence to coming together.
And your family role models, you were
And
fortunate.
yes, I had strong family
feminine
role models of my mother or grandmother, etc. So I saw these very powerful women who loved and who were sensual and who were, I'll say, sexual and were passionate. And I think that's the vulnerability. Do you know, there's as you were saying that, I thought one of the things, apart from this speaking from the womb, and is our emotionality, is our caring, is our loving. You know, we are magnetic beings rather than electrical beings. So we do draw into ourselves those that we want to care for. And I feel that so many times a woman is derided for her vulnerability, for her emotionality, her sensitivity, you know, or grow up, or be, you know, be like a man, stop crying.
Be professional.
Be professional.
I was told be professional.
Yes.
Don't, you know, you be over emotional and histrionic. I heard the word histrionic. I had to look it up. I was like, what's histrionic? This is important to me.
Yes, there you go. And I think it's very fine balance, because again, in my work as a doctor, it wasn't appropriate to break down and sob. But I think there was also a problem with that, because so many doctors look for some way of dealing with these emotions that are not allowed to spread. And same with nurses or anybody in the caring professions. It's not appropriate. You say, oh my goodness, I'm having a terrible moment.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, forgive me, I'm not going to be there for you. But I think that caringness still can come through and needs an outlet. And I think even amongst women, I find women can be just as mean to another woman as a man can be. Often, you know, I'll come home to my husband, you know, and I want a hug. I don't want someone explaining why I'm like this or trying to fix me. I just want a hug. And I want to be, you know, told that, not that it's all right or wrong. I don't want need to judge. I just need to feel. And I'm just moving into that part that so many times, if you've been upset, and obviously you recently have been, and you don't want someone fixing you. We know that. You don't want someone saying, there, it's going to be okay. You'll get another dog. It'll be fine. Actually, in that moment, you just want someone to hold you and someone to soothe you and someone to hear you.
Yeah,
like, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. Allow me to feel it. Yeah.
Let me feel. And to me, that's the feminine. And I think when a woman feels unable to have what we call compassion for another human being, which is not the same as empathy. In other words, me breaking down in tears because I'm feeling everything you're feeling. But when I can hold that space, as you say, and just feel, how can I say, resonate with your feelings without taking them on.
That's the
and
trick.
really, you know, compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it means to have true feminine energy. And I meet so many women who can't cry or can't be angry or can't let themselves down because they'll feel that they're a wimp. And again, I often ask, as you said, role models, you know, what was your mother like? Oh, she was always crying, so I grew up not to cry. Well, okay, but she may have been so self-indulgent in her crying. You don't want to go there. But maybe there's a part of you that needs to allow this to happen and come out of your body. And so we often see, for instance, heavy bleeding is a sign of crying.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So tears not shed above or shed below.
Come out through the womb.
Wow.
You know, fibroids, so common in women. Who takes care of me? And that's anger and tears. Like, what about me?
Wow.
And so, you know, and then breast cancer, you know, you've lost yourself that needs loving. You know, so many issues, sinus problems. I mean, just so many sinus problems, just not their tears. You know, runny nose, it's all coming out every hole. It's trying to come out every skin, you know, eczemas, lung issues. So much of this is about grief and sadness that can't come out. Sometimes even diarrhea. You know, it's got to come out somewhere.
It's incredible, Christine. Your book, Frontiers of Health, I keep referring it. Look at all the markers.
Oh, thank you.
It's just for the audience. It's full of these type of examples of these associations that you've learned in your extensive career that are associated with mind, body, and of course Louise Hay's famous work on heal your body. Is it?
Yes.
The body list, where she associates the different conditions with the body parts, and it's just truly mind-blowing. It really is. And, you know, I would suggest to the audience, you know, if the physical approach isn't working for you, are you open to, could it be a psychological issue that's connected? You know, are you at least open to exploring it? You know, because,
well, I think the two have to be side by side, if I may say, Amy. I think, you know, I get lots of people who are physically ill and maybe going through physical treatments, but they say, well, why did I get this? What's the deeper message? So it's not about, it's in your mind. It's definitely a physical problem. But we all want to heal at the deeper level. And that's why I'm not a medical intuitive, because I'm not really interested in trying to diagnose you at that level. I want to diagnose it before it becomes a physical problem. So that's why I deal with the energies and the chakras. Of course, if you have a physical problem, as I say, I'm very happy to work with you. But most of the time, it's how do I prevent this needing to be expressed as a physical problem? Because that's what the body's saying. It's like, hey, I've been telling you this for the last 5 years. You're not listening. We're going to have a physical problem. And so the physical problem often comes from deep emotions. And that's why my first question, and a question I would suggest for our audience, is what was happening when you got sick? And when I ask that, people say, I know why I have cancer. I know why I have this. Because they knew 5 months ago, 6 months ago, something wasn't working.
What if someone can't remember? Excuse me. What if
they always say that, but I always say, you know, everybody.
Really?
You know?
They do.
I mean, I'm sorry, but if I said, what were you doing last summer? You know, so you kind of wind it back and you say, okay. You know,
look at your calendar.
Yeah, you go and get your calendar, and they go, oh yeah, you know, you know. And they might say, well, it wasn't exactly that day. And I'm like, okay, we won't get lost on that particular day.
Don't mince hairs here.
What was it like a year ago or whatever? Everybody knows. You know, if someone says, I don't remember, then they don't want to.
Well, you're just
and then I explain to them, oh, maybe, you know, this condition tells me this and this. Was that going on in your life? And they go, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're triggering in me. I mean, we can all think of examples of people, and it was even me, who are doing all the outside healthy things right, who physically appear super healthy, blah, blah, blah. But unbeknownst to us, or maybe on some level it is beknownst to us, there's something brewing inside. Like, you know, you hear you say, cancer doesn't happen overnight. It takes well, you tell us, decades, right? So it's brewing. And I got to tell you, I have another mentor that I worked with, and we were doing a medicine journey, and we did a soul regression. And he's a very gifted shaman. And he basically did this soul regression for me, where in the meditation, in the ceremony, he had me, you know, mentally going into the cavern and entering this cave and crossing the forest. And I was in this cave, and he had rattles and drums and all this stuff. And I'm just going to kind of cut to the chase. But basically, I remember we brought the attention to my abdomen, my intestines, my area, but I really think it was my uterus and ovaries. And I felt like this dark, stuck energy that through, as we progressed, it was like I felt it unwinding and getting like shaken up. Not shaken's too hard of a word, just, you know, just moved, because it was this dead, stuck energy. And I felt it kind of like leaving my body. And I swear to God, I hate to even say it out loud, but I think it was a very serious illness that was brewing inside me, in spite of my lifetime of being 35 years in health and fitness and wellness. In spite of all the things I'm doing correctly on the outside, that was still in there, because it was unresolved, emotional, whatever, maybe a past life, who knows? But it was in that area of my body. I'm convinced to this day that was going to be an illness that I got removed.
No doubt. And you know, just to make sure the audience knows, I don't see illness as a problem. I think that we focus, you know, on that physicalness of, oh my God. And often there is a lot of shame. You're just if I may say, you're saying, it's like, well, I never get sick because I do this. Like,
and I do everything right.
You know, I never, you know, so how, and so I prefer illness as a solution, a messenger from the soul. And sometimes that illness is requesting us to just I always say it gives us an opportunity for change. And so the fact that you tapped into this and it didn't manifest, that's great, because you heard the message of this energy before you needed to manifest it. And who knows? I mean, we always say cancer is moving through our body every day. And we all have cancer potential every day. It's not that, it's when it does manifest, it's coming from a loving place of your soul that says, no, you will pay attention.
Yeah.
You will pay attention because I love you. So if we
Mm-hmm.
can move beyond the sort of, how do I get rid of this as quickly as I can? More like, wow, am I not listening? I'm not listening to that part of myself. And I'm trying to fix it. And I do see that in so many opportunities where people will describe, well, I had this therapy and this therapy and this therapy. And I get, but what was its message? Oh, I didn't listen to the message.
And you're making
and
me
so therefore it's going to come back, because all it came for was the messenger, and all you're trying to do is shoot the messenger.
And you're making me think of how I handled that, was that even though we had moved it out of my body and how grateful I was smart enough to know this is just going to come back if I don't change my life, if I don't change how I am and who I am, because it was in the second chakra, self-care, self-love, feeling my feelings, my emotions, my power center, everything we're talking about, my uterus, my ovaries, my feelings. So I that was a big shift for me, to be like, stop making excuses and keep telling yourself, it's not okay to feel that way, or forcing yourself to do this, that, and the other, being too much in my head and shooting myself. But give yourself, like, take a walk after lunch because it's a beautiful day. Like, just put the work down and take your bath. And so I did change my life. I didn't just say, oh, thank goodness I was lucky enough to get that out of my body. Yes. I knew it was going to come back if I didn't wake up. Well,
you just remind me, and I know we're coming to our close, but I just want to say I developed breast cancer many years ago now, and beautifully, I thrived on that. But, breast cancer and any cancer, breast cancer was not only I didn't love myself or nurture myself, I'd lost the self that needed loving. And I think as women, we're more likely to put our priorities at the lowest level. I realized that everybody else's needs were much more important than mine. And I'm hearing something similar in what you're saying.
Oh, yes.
In other words, or even following the rules of what I think I should be doing rather than having the pleasure of it, the shoulds coming for the wants, what I want to do. And, anybody listening who is like me or maybe like you, it is not about, women have been told they have to sacrifice themselves for other people, for their family. If you love someone, you'll sacrifice yourself, you'll compromise. This is not okay. Nor is it about, I'm the only person in this group. But when we take care of ourselves, we can take care of others. And that self is, so what I learned to do was, instead of saying yes to everything when someone asked me, I would say, let me think about it.
Yep. You bite some time.
Because I found it difficult to say no. And I'm sure others are out there who say, they always say yes, or, whatever you want is fine with me. But I would say, let me think about it. And I always knew that when I said, let me think about it, I was going to be no. But at least I gave myself that space. And I would then say, will this meeting, will this nurture me? And that meant, like you're saying, I had to actually feel into my body and say, well, what does nurture me? What does feel good? Because I think that's where we talk about being a real woman. It's like, do I even know what brings me a nurturing energy? Because so many women only know it from a headspace or a quick fix.
True.
Oh, I love a coffee. I love sex, but it's not actually feeding their soul or giving them a sense of being able to rest into that energy.
Or what others do, like get a manicure or a bubble bath.
Yes.
Like, no, you got to find what really does it for
exactly.
you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I learned when I, developed breast cancer. It was like, it wasn't that I wasn't having my massages and everything, but it actually was not nurturing me, because I would lie there and be thinking all the time.
Right.
Or I'd be listening to the therapist's problem, and I would be therapizing them. So this is why it's so important for all of us to listen to, as you say, find what frequency works for us, what nurtures me, and it isn't the same for everybody else.
Brilliant. You know, I could keep you here for weeks and months at a time. Are there any final thoughts? We've really covered a lot of different things today. I want to just send people back to 25. Please, I know you want more of Dr. Page. Listen to episode 25. But before we get to how they can find you and your amazing show and courses, just any final thoughts today to make you feel complete?
You know, as you know, I recently was with the dolphins, and that dolphin energy is so important to me. I have had the opportunity to swim with whales and dolphins, but when I was going back through the teachings they've given me, one of the things they say is that they say, we don't understand humans that can't have self-love. All right. So we've been talking about that, you and I, self-love, but to them, it's not a state of the mind, it's a state of the beingness. So they say, do everything with in the best you can do it to the fullest of your ability. And that's what they call self-love.
Wow.
And it has nothing connected to, am I good enough? It's just being the best you can be in the moment.
I love that. Dr. Ibrahim Karim calls that excellence of action.
There you go. I call it loving in the moment. You know, because again, I'm taking out, there's a point of goal. It's just be all that you are, because that's all we can ever do.
I love that.
And I feel
really
that's,
great.
and then when they dive back into the water, so they may spin up and be the best they can be in that moment of that spin, when they let go of everything. And so they they'd say, why do humans hold on to beliefs? So I think that's what I would put over as a message. Just be the best you can be in the moment. Be full of yourself. Be full of whatever you're doing, do it to the fullest. And then let it go. Don't be attached to the result.
Yeah.
And be ready for that next spin or that next jump out the water. And I feel we're moving away from words that say that we have to improve ourselves, or you know, that we're not enough. We are all enough right now. We just have to fill ourselves with the joy of that. I
love that, because as somebody who's always tried the hardest, I mean, I was even told that as a kid, that she might not be the smartest kid in class, but she sure tries the hardest. And when I was on all my sports, I was the one who would hustle the most, like just tried the hardest. I was always trying. And now it's like, okay, just sometimes you can over-try.
And when people say just be, but it's be the best that you are now, or be content with who you are now, because it is the very best that is needed in this moment.
I love that. It just brings the whole thing, it just tones it down, and just brings a softness that's very, very calming to my nervous system. I love that, as you always are. Dr. Page, how can people find you? Where would you like to direct the audience? I know you've got a lot of outlets where people can get more of you.
Well, it's nice and easy. My website is christinepage.com, and Christine with a CH, and Page is Page. Please do go there. Got lots of things that you can see for free, including my podcasts that are there on the website, but they're also, as you mentioned, Heart Speak comes out every week, available on iTunes, YouTube, and all the others that can be there. And join me on my Facebook, which again is under my name, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. And I do have some women's work there. If you go into Women's Mysteries, different levels of it, you might just want to tap your toes into it and go for the introductory or go deeper. But to me, we've forgotten as women just all our beautiful rituals that bring us back home. And so that's what my message is. It's not about developing something that isn't already inherently inside us. And that's all I'm about, is activating what is already there.
You're reawakening Aphrodite.
Absolutely. And perfect for our conversation.
I feel like that's what you taught us today, is how to awaken Aphrodite in us.
Yes.
I love it. Are you planning on offering any in person again soon?
Oh, I offer my own one-to-one sessions. So I should say I do soul readings, and you can book those via my website. Thank you for mentioning those.
Yes.
And I also do supervision, which is 4 sessions. If someone's going through some sort of movement, some transformation, you can always sign up for those as well. But thank you for mentioning my sessions.
So many.
And I do the astrology during that. So sometimes people just sign up to have their astrology chart read because they've never had it read or don't know who they are through that.
and all your books, the free
Mhm.
podcast, Heart Speak, which is one of the best names ever. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much. And my books are there and they're on Amazon. So please.
Yep,
go and
they're
look.
all
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, well, everybody, you know what to do. Please check out, that'll all be in the show notes in case you're driving or busy or whatever, so you can find out more of Christine. Check out episode 25 again, where she appeared. And if you want to support me and the show, the best way to do so is to subscribe. And even if you would leave a review, you can check out all the things I love so much over on my website, which is just my name. And you can get some special discount coupons there, save some money. I like doing a win-win-win. I win, you win, and they win. We all win. So thank you again, Dr. Page, and we'll see you next time, everybody. Now go awakening Aphrodite in you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, everybody, for being with us.
Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.